Buying a watch seems simple enough until you actually dive into it, and you learn that there are hundreds of different brands to choose from, tons of different styles and specs, and many different price points. In this video, we're going to go over the 7 most important rules to consider before buying a watch. Rule number 1, there are no rules. And I'm not just saying that to be like inclusive or whatever. There actually are no rules that you have to follow. A lot of watch collectors, especially the ones that you see online and on social media, tend to take this hobby very seriously, like too seriously. And oftentimes there's a lot of hype and snobbery about which watch brands you should and shouldn't buy. Very specific specifications on what constitutes a good watch versus a bad watch, and all these other arbitrarily specific rules that have more to do with status and flexing on other people than actual watch collecting. So rule number 1 is that there are no rules to watch collecting. Don't take this hobby too seriously. You should buy watches that you like and you enjoy, not watches that fill the needs or specifications of random people like myself on the internet. So if you don't follow any other rules, rule number 1 is the most important. There are no rules. Rule number 2, buy something with longevity in mind. There's nothing worse than buying something, not just watch related, but buying some kind of item that breaks in a few months or a year. A few of my favorite watches in my watch collection are ones that were passed down to me from my grandfathers. I just think that's such a cool aspect of good watch collecting, where if you buy a timepiece that actually has good longevity and durability, you could potentially pass that down to your kids or even your grandkids. And that alone makes a watch's story so cool, in my opinion. It doesn't matter if the watch was bought for $10 or $10,000. The fact that it has survived through multiple generations is pretty awesome. So I think one of the most important things to consider before buying a watch is the longevity that that watch is going to have. And while brand isn't the most important thing when it comes to watch collecting, and it doesn't always indicate how long a watch is going to last, you do get a lot more data with these well-established, popular brands to know roughly how durable and long-lasting the watch is going to be. Budget brands like Casio, Seiko, Timex, these are some examples of trustworthy brands that have a reliable history of producing good watches. Watches that last a long time with minimal to no maintenance and can likely be passed down through generations. And then obviously we have the higher end models. So things like Rolex, Omega, JLC, watches with great reputations that are known for being passed down. So brand isn't everything, but in a lot of cases it is a good proxy for figuring out the durability and longevity of a watch. By the way, if you're hunting for new budget watches or just like looking at them, check out what I built at WristFind.com. It's basically Tinder for discovering new affordable watches. You can see pictures, specs, prices, and save your favorites. It's also 100% free to use. Just head to WristFind.com and start swiping. Rule number 3, pay attention to the specs of the watch. The first one is water resistance. If you plan on swimming with your watch, or you just want to be able to wear it without worrying about it, you probably want to look for a watch that has at least 100 meters of water resistance. This way, if you leave it on in the pool or you jump in the lake with it, it's no problem. If you don't care about swimming with your watch and you know you'll take good care of it and you won't leave it exposed to any rain or water, you're going to be totally fine under 100 meters, even under 50 meters of water resistance. And then if you're actually going to go diving with your watch and you need something more robust, go for 200 meters or above. The next spec to look at is the crystal. The crystal is the clear covering over the watch dial. And these crystals are made with a variety of materials that have different levels of scratch resistance. The 3 most common ones are acrylic, mineral glass, and sapphire crystal. And they tend to have scratch resistance in this order, with acrylic being the easiest to scratch, but also ironically the easiest to buff out. Mineral glass is somewhere in the middle, and then sapphire crystal is typically the most scratch resistant. They also tend to be priced in this order, with most higher end watches featuring a sapphire crystal, and typically the cheapest ones having acrylic or mineral crystals. So if you're worried about scratches, or you know that they're going to drive you crazy to see on your watch, you might opt for something like a sapphire crystal. There's lots of other specs to pay attention to, but I think the last big one to really consider is the case size. This is typically a pretty prominent part of the watch's listing or description, usually with the case width being the most talked about dimension. And case width is definitely an important dimension to look at, but you also really want to pay attention to the lug-to-lug distance, which is basically the total height of the watch all the way up to the start of the bracelet or the strap. And this is a really important dimension to pay attention to because it will really determine how big or small the watch looks on your wrist. Two watches can have the exact same case width, but wear completely differently based on their lug-to-lug distance. Honestly, the best way to figure out what the best fit is for you is just through trial and error. Try on a bunch of different watches that have different lug-to-lug distances and see what looks best on your wrist. Rule number 4, buy a watch that makes you excited. You don't want your watch collecting dust in a box somewhere. You want to actually experience it and wear it. And the best way to ensure that this happens is to buy a watch that actually excites you. If it's got an interesting look or a cool complication or a color that catches your eye, go for it. Don't buy something plain or boring just because you feel like you have to fit in or wear what everyone else is wearing. Trust me, you'll get way more compliments and people asking about your watch if it's something completely different. And if the plain, boring watch is the one that gets you excited, go for that one. The point is, when you're browsing for watches, there's often a few that will catch your eye. And then the other part of your brain will tell you to go for something safer or something that fits in a little bit better. Listen to the first part of your brain and buy the more interesting one that first caught your eye. Rule number 5, decide if you want a grab and go watch or something that you admire the mechanics of. This is pretty much a long-winded way of saying decide if you want a quartz watch or a mechanical watch. Quartz watches are powered by a battery and a quartz crystal. They're typically much cheaper and easier to maintain and much more accurate when it comes to timekeeping. Mechanical watches are usually powered either by some kind of hand winding mechanism or by an automatic movement, which is powered by a rotor which winds up a spring as you wear the watch. Mechanical watches are awesome, especially if you have an open case back and you can see the movement and the rotor and all the gears spinning around. It's obviously a more old school way of watchmaking, but that's kind of the point. But there are downsides to owning a mechanical watch. They're typically more expensive, they're not as accurate, and usually you're going to have to reset the time every time you wear the watch. Unless you wear the watch every single day or at least every other day, or if you keep it on a watch winder, the watch is naturally going to run out of power if you don't keep it wound or keep wearing it. That's just how they work. So it's not a huge deal, and it's obviously easy to set the watch and get it started up again. But if you're someone who just wants to grab their watch, throw it on, and not worry about all that, a quartz watch is probably the way to go. You could leave it on your dresser for a week or a month, and whenever you're ready to use it, just throw it on and you're good to go. Unlike a mechanical movement where the watch is almost guaranteed to be dead at that point, and you're either going to have to wind it or wear it around for a few minutes to power it back up. So just another important spec to think about. If you want a grab and go watch, go for quartz. If you want a more romantic, old school collector vibe of a watch, go for mechanical. Neither is better than the other, it's just up to what you want out of your watch. Rule number 6, buy a watch you can afford. This seems like it should be pretty obvious, but with all the buy now, pay later options and the crazy credit card stats of the average person, I think it's important to say that you shouldn't buy a watch that you can't actually afford. This hobby can get very expensive and honestly very tempting. There's always a cooler watch at a higher price point that feels like if you just get that one, you'll be set for life. But don't stretch your budget beyond what you can reasonably afford for a watch. Again, this hobby is supposed to be fun and enjoyable. It's not supposed to put you into debt. Rule number 7, buy a watch for you, not for anyone else. I realize when I say that, it sort of sounds like I'm saying don't buy watches as a gift for someone else, which I am not saying. Watches are, in my opinion, one of the best gift options, and if you want my picks for the top gift watches on Amazon, watch this video up here. But what I'm saying here is don't buy a watch to impress other people, or don't buy a watch because of all the hype that you see about it on social media. If there's a lot of hype about a watch and you also really like the watch, then go for it. I also don't think you should stay away from watches just because they're popular. But I do think it's tempting to feel like you should like something because other people like it. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's buying this watch and you're the one that's gonna wear it. So buy it for you and buy the one that you like. Don't buy the one that you feel like you have to like. All right, let me know down in the comments if there's any rules that you would add to this list, and let me know what watch you're wearing right now. Right now I got on the Timex Q chronograph. Also, let me know if there's any other videos I should make or watches I should review in the future. Thanks so much for watching. Happy watch collecting, and I'll see you in the next video.